different examples here, all of these will refer to file.txt in the current directory. Every single one of these. So this gives us some flexibility in what we can request in terms of the file. And so if you're trying to write a filter for this, you just kind of want to die a little bit. But this is a different way of mangling the file name, but we can use it in the same way. Highlight.php is not the same as highlight.php dot. Restricted.txt is not the same as restricted.txt space. So next, let's talk about DOS special device files. Or actually, before we talk about this, I want to talk about the fact that no, let's save that for later. Never mind. So device files are a pretty well-known concept if you know anything about operating systems. For instance, dev null on Unix-based systems is the bit bucket. You throw things at it and it swallows them up and it goes to nowhere. Or if you try to read from it, well, good luck. Now DOS had these device files and they've been inherited by Windows, so you can still use them. They're very similar to how device files work on Unix systems. They allow file operations to be performed on devices and sort of translated into commands for those devices. And so some examples of things that you can use are con, which are the console, which is the console, PRN, which is the first parallel printer connected to the computer. Very useful these days. COM1, the first serial port on the computer, and null, NUL, which is the dev null equivalent for DOS. So I'm sure some of you are going, okay, well, yeah, I already know about this stuff, whatever. But here's something you might not know. They exist everywhere. Even if you give an absolute path, you can still access them. So if we request con from A by itself, or with an absolute path, or with a sort of a relative path, or if we request it from some directory, even one that we don't have access to, or most interestingly, if the path resolves even as a file up to the point where we add a slash and a device file name, it still resolves to the same device. So, and this is going to be very important very soon. This guy right here. So, number 2, they can have any file extension. Completely ignored. So con.exe is the same as con.bat, is the same as con.php, etc., etc., etc. So, let's say you need to you want to access a device file with a particular path, but it needs to have a specific extension. No problem. No problem. Interestingly, because they can have any file extension, and because these device files don't technically exist on the file system at all, they don't have to follow NTFS restrictions on some of the NTFS restrictions on file names. So, for instance, you can have a file which exceeds 260 characters, which is the maximum length for a file name on a Windows system. Now, how many application developers out there do you think might check for a file and then go, all right, so this exists, so the file name can't be longer than 260 characters. So let me copy this into a 260 byte buffer. So then we have a buffer overflow. And it's natural to expect that you can't have a file name that would violate the terms of the file system if the operating system says, yes, this exists on the file system where you asked for it. But like I said, it technically exists, but not on the file system, so it doesn't have to follow those restrictions. And actually, let me show you something. So we're just using the type command. It's a built-in command in command.exe. Go. There we go. So, come on. Okay, well, basically, make a long story short, there's a buffer overflow, which can be used against the type command. Now, it's not running as any higher privileges than we are, and if you have the ability to run arbitrary command, operating system commands, well, yeah. But it says something that Microsoft doesn't even properly protect against this. So, they should maybe know better, but it's a little bit of a weird attack. So, just imagine who else would be vulnerable if Microsoft products are vulnerable to this sort of thing. And for some reason, my PowerPoint didn't stay with it, which is great.
Quick question. On the attacks that you're, or at least in the new ones that you're showing so far, at least from the web server side, IIS is naturally part of the Windows Server, but you were mentioning it's also part of Apache is cross-platform.
Right.
As with respect for the website, Apache on Windows, Apache
on Windows. Yeah, all these attacks will only work on Windows systems.
Okay, so Apache or IIS on Windows or Apache on Windows.
The funny thing is that IIS actually does not accept 8.3 aliases or file names with the funny trailing characters at the end. So, so well done. But it doesn't work on IIS. There is a web server that I'll be showing in a bit, which at least did not handle any of this properly at all. Apache does handle these properly, but the problem is that it does accept the 8.3 aliases, so you can still do IDS evasion stuff and work with the web server anyway. Alright, so since we can provide an arbitrary file extension for our DOS device files, we can use any extension we want and have the file handled as anything we want. So for instance, let's say you have a serial modem attached to your web server, or maybe for some reason you have Bluetooth dongle, which is attached to a COM port to exchange data with whatever. And so you go to the web server and you request com1.php. Now, if this web server is going to actually try to read from com1.php, it's going to take in whatever's coming off of that serial modem or off of that Bluetooth connection and then run it as PHP code, which is pretty cool. So we can request this, and then if we can contact that serial modem, we can just shoot off whatever to it. So next I want to talk about prefixes that we can put on various file paths in order to have them interpreted a little bit different. So we have a couple of different prefixes that we can throw on here. One, so we can refer to NT objects, or sort of the NT device namespace, as it is sometimes called. Or when files don't exist on the local file system, we can refer to them using that. Or because they have names that are not exactly kosher in the Windows world, because either they violate some restriction or something of that variety. So let's start out with what I'm referring to as the minimal parsing prefix. Even in the MSDN documentation, I wasn't able to find a name for it, so I just sort of gave it. So using the minimal parsing prefix, which is $whack whack, preceding an absolute file path, can't use current directory or parent directory markers, has to be fully qualified path. So basically what the minimal parsing prefix does is it disables a lot of the routines that Windows runs against file names before it actually does what it's been asked to do with the file name. So for instance, it's going to stop it from preventing file names with reserved names like con.whatever or null.whatever or file.txt. We can add those trailing characters that are usually discarded without having them discarded. And this can cause a lot of interesting problems.